Okay, so a massive corruption report has just landed in Ghana. And believe me, it is sending some serious shockwaves through the political world. We're talking about the Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited Contract, or SML for short. Today, we're going to break down the really explosive findings from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, that's the OSP, to figure out what went wrong, who's about to be charged, and why this is such a huge test for the entire country. And look, the OSP is not holding back at all. This quote right here, it's the heart of their entire investigation. Unnecessary, official patronage, and significant financial loss. That phrase, official patronage, is so important. It basically means the deal wasn't given out because it was a good idea, but because of improper influence from people in high places. The real bombshell here isn't just that this was a bad deal. The OSP is arguing it was a deal that never should have happened in the first place.
So the big question is, how did this whole deal go so completely off the rails? Let's dig into the specifics of what the OSP actually found inside the contract itself. So on the one hand, you have the official story, right? That SML was brought in for a really important job, to help the state collect more revenue. Sounds great. But what did the OSP find? Something totally different. They argue that this whole justification was built on, and I quote, false and unverified claims. Essentially, the report is saying the entire reason for this contract was pretty much made up.
And the OSP really lays out how this deal was just set up to fail the public from the get-go. First off, basic rules like getting the right approvals were just ignored. Then payments were just automatic, which means money was flying out the door without the proper checks. And maybe the most shocking part? SML was allegedly getting paid whether they did the work or not. When you add all that up, well, you get exactly what the report says. A massive financial loss for Ghana.
Okay, so if the deal was this bad, who's on the hook for it? Well, the OSP report isn't shy about naming names.
All right, here's the list of 6 former high-ranking officials who are now facing charges. And right at the top, you've got the former Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. The OSP calls him the chief patron of the whole deal. Now, what does that mean? It basically suggests he was the main political muscle, the one protecting and pushing this contract through, putting him right at the center of everything. And he's joined by key figures from his own ministry and the Ghana Revenue Authority, the very people who are supposed to be protecting the country's money.
And these aren't just slaps on the wrist. We are talking about serious charges of corruption and other related offenses. The OSP has also put a clock on it, saying prosecutions are expected to start before the end of November 2025. This isn't some vague, maybe someday promise. They're saying this is happening, and it's happening soon. But you might be wondering, how did the OSP even get to these bombshell conclusions? To really get the weight of these charges, you gotta look at how they did their homework.
This wasn't some quick, sloppy job. The OSP laid out their whole game plan. It started with surveillance and monitoring. Then they dug through, mountains of documents. After that came formal interviews. And they worked with other public institutions to double and triple check every single fact. They were building this case piece by piece, making sure it was solid. 31. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how many people of interest they brought in for formal interviews. This wasn't just about shuffling papers from a distance. It was about sitting down with the key players from the Ministry of Finance, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and SML itself to get their stories and see where things didn't add up.
Okay, so prosecutions are one thing, but what about the cash? What's going to happen to all the money the OSP says was wrongly paid out? Let's talk about the financial side of this. The OSP is going after 125 million Ghanaian cedis. They're telling SML to give it back. Now, the official term is disgorgement of unjust enrichment, which is just a fancy legal way of saying you got money you weren't supposed to get, and now we're taking it back. It's a direct move to claw back public funds. But this report goes even deeper. It's not just about one bad deal. The OSP is basically sounding the alarm, saying this case shows that the whole system has some serious cracks. So simply prosecuting a few people isn't enough. They're calling for big, fundamental changes in how the government handles public money and awards contracts, so something like this can never happen again.
So what's the big takeaway here for Ghana? This is so much more than just another scandal. It's really a defining moment, a real moment of truth for the country's whole anti-corruption fight.
I mean, this has totally kicked off a huge national debate about accountability. It's being seen as a landmark case, one that shows the OSP is willing and able to go after the big fish.
And in a lot of ways, this puts the entire system on trial. Not just the people being charged, but the courts, the government, and the very idea of the rule of law in Ghana. And that really brings us to the biggest question of all. You have a former finance minister and other top officials actually facing prosecution. Could this be a turning point, a new chapter for accountability in Ghana? The OSP has thrown down the gauntlet. Now everyone is watching to see what happens next.